Welcome to Funny History. It's November, that magical time of year where everyone believes that they are a political genius and knows what they're talking about around voting time. It's also that time of year where parents are going, why do my kids have 10 days off and 15 half days? Elections are on everyone's mind, and so is the question, who the hell designed this system? But before we talk about today's voting circus, let's go way back. And I mean way back, where it all started. Because democracy didn't start as a beacon of freedom. No, it actually started as kind of the cancel culture. And you may not realize this, but the cancel culture goes way farther back than you may know. A bunch of guys voting on who to cancel. So sit back and let's learn about elections and maybe have a couple laughs along the way. I'm your host, Paul Delangelo, and this is Funny History. Ancient Greece, 508 BC. That's right, that's where it all started. The birthplace of democracy. The only difference is it actually was more of a negative vote than a positive vote. Citizens, well, meaning rich white landowners only, would write the names of the politicians they hated on a broken piece of pottery. It was called something like Osakra. If a guy got more than 6,000 hate mails, he was exiled for 10 years. That's right, the first democracy was basically Twitter with sandals. You didn't win office, you actually got canceled with broken pottery. So the broken pottery basically broke your dreams of being president one day. Imagine if we had that same process today. Congress would look like a ghost town by Tuesday. And the internet trolls, they'd be the ruling class and running our military. The "you're canceled, bro" is a lot older than half of our Congress. Kind of crazy, right? A lot of people think it's a new fad. No, it's been going on since the beginning of democracy. Now fast forward to 13th century Venice. This is where approval voting actually was invented. You could literally vote for every candidate that you liked. There was no limit to it. This is the first time in history the politicians actually got voted in by people that they liked. The only difference from now until then is that they got their fake news by gondola. And oddly enough, they were chasing clout even back in the 13th century, trying to go viral like a TikTok trend, only 13th century style Venice, so it was slightly different. Imagine the hashtags, blessed by the Pope and the Doge, vote for me. Now, as time went on, and people were allowed to actually vote for people they liked. Eventually, in 1776, America was founded. And yes, this is where most people believe that modern day elections and freedom all started. Back in 1776, they wrote the Constitution and they put the pen to paper saying, all men are created equally. And trust me, they meant it. Except the only thing was only white men over 21 could vote. So when they said men, they meant men. All men created equally? Well, women, nope. Black men, nope. Only until the Civil War is when things started to change. So basically, in the beginning of America, democracy was a little boys' club, a private club with velvet rope, and a racist bouncer who would only let in who he liked. I mean, imagine trying to get a vote back then. The bouncer would stop you and be like, yo, sorry, ma'am. The club's kind of full with all rich white men over 21, and you're not like them. Shoo along. How ironic is it that an entire country tagline and marketing ploy was built on men are all created equally. It was actually built on a lot of racism at that time. That's like Bernie Sanders saying universal health care at all. but only for rich white men and women in Congress and in the government like me. Oh, wait a minute. Doesn't everyone in the government get free health care? Oops, sorry, Bernie. It took until 1920 for women to be able to vote. That is 144 years of all men are created equally, except for you, and you. When those men wrote down all men are created equally, I guess some of them were a little tired of their wives nagging them to get chores done. I mean, that's like showing up at a women's rights rally on a sundial. Why would you not want women to vote? They're literally the most opinionated creatures on earth. The government basically built a kid's treehouse and said, no women allowed, they got cooties. Adults acting like children in government? Who would have ever thought something like that would happen? Well, clearly hundreds of years later, it's still going on and happening. Now, America wasn't the only ones who created democracy and a voting system. Different countries around the world throughout history have created their own elections and voting systems, which may or may not have been a good idea. Take instant runoff voting, which means you vote for one candidate, two candidates, three candidates. Your first choice, your second choice, your third choice. Now, if your first choice loses, it goes to your second choice. If both of them lose, it goes to your third choice. It's basically like Tinder for politics. Oh man, this guy, he didn't like my healthcare policy. Swipe right, go to the next politician. And then there's fusion voting, which means a candidate can run under multiple parties. New York still does this. I guess that's why Cuomo won at one point, and now he lost, because even being a Democrat and independent, people still didn't want you, Cuomo. It's kind of like being on Hinge and seeing the same guy's picture, but every time you swipe, he's got a different height, weight, and career. He's a Democrat on one bio, a Republican on the other, and somehow he's lying on every bio you read. Now let's talk about America's biggest controversial invention ever. And I'm not talking about deep fried Oreos. No, I'm talking about the Electoral College. The Electoral College is extremely confusing to a lot of people, and conspiracy theorists feel that it's a way for the government to rig elections. When the Founding Fathers were writing the Constitution, they couldn't agree on how to pick a president. Half said, let Congress decide. The other half said, let the people decide. So they made up this system basically that you vote for someone who votes for someone who votes for the president. Kind of confusing, right? I mean, it's like ordering DoorDash through 3 different drivers and you're waiting for your burger to come and you end up with a salad and a milkshake. I mean, every 4 years, Americans and people who believe that they are political experts act like they really know what the Electoral College is. It's kind of like boomers with crypto. They talk like they know what they're talking about, but they have no idea. A lot of people believe that the Electoral College is there for the government to rig elections. You know, kind of like that referee Donahue with the NBA games. He may have threw a few extra flags. It's kind of like an NFL ref that keeps throwing flags and making bad calls all game long, and then next season you're hoping he ain't going to be reffing a game, and you see him the first game of the year, and you're like, oh shit, this guy's back. You know how many dimes I lost on betting on these games with this guy? The biggest problem when the Founding Fathers were coming up with this system, they were worried that bigger states like New York and Virginia, with the amount of people that live there, would dominate the vote, and they would end up voting the president in every single year. So they thought, you know what's a great idea? Let's give every state a say in voting the president in. Even the states that had more cows than people. Great idea, right? You know, because cows' lives matter. And apparently their political opinions also do. Sure, Wyoming, you get a turn too. It's basically like putting a Great Dane and a Chihuahua in the same yard because you're afraid you might hurt their feelings or equality. Now, or basically like putting a youth baseball team against the New York Yankees because it should be a level playing field. You could literally win the popular vote and still lose the election. Kind of crazy, right? That's not democracy. That's actually like a raffle at Applebee's. And probes to Mars and to the farthest reaches of space. I'm pretty sure we could come up with an airtight, foolproof election system that no one could tamper with or rig. But as some conspiracy theorists may say, they don't want to do that. They've kept this system the same for hundreds of years because they know how to put the fix in. Now, throughout America's history and the world's history, there's been some pretty funny moments in elections. You know, like in 1948 when Dewey defeated Truman, I think. Papers printed all over the place. Headlines. Now, they printed these newspapers and headlines before they even counted all of the votes. I mean, it's basically like the 1940s version of posting a breakup post with your girlfriend before you guys even have a talk. Back in the 1940s, they didn't have fake news. They had premature news. Or how about we go a little farther back to 1834 when Andrew Jackson actually won the popular vote but lost because of the Electoral College. And Andrew Jackson was like, nah, not on my watch. Imagine your favorite football team winning the Super Bowl. And as Roger Goodell's walking the trophy out to them, he goes, nah, you know what? I really like the other team better. You guys won instead. Forget that score. They're the Super Bowl winners. Now, you may think that America is the only country that has fouled up a ton of elections. Hold my beer for a minute, because Afghanistan may have taken the cake on this one. In 2009, Afghanistan had an election. Ballot boxes were missing. Invisible ink was literally washing off of votes. Voter cards were being sold on the street. Democracy in 2009, Afghanistan, was basically like a yard sale. You know that when your vote is being wiped off with a baby wipe, democracy is really in question. Or how about in 2007 in Nigeria? Ballot boxes were stolen and they announced a winner before they even counted any votes. I mean, basically their election was kind of like a David Blaine concert. Now you see the ballot boxes. Alakazam! No, you don't! And somehow you won! Oh, and our good friends England have failed up more than one election in their time. They've had some of the silliest elections also. Maybe there was really a reason why our forefathers wanted freedom, and it wasn't just over tea. Back in the UK, Lord Buckethead and Count Binface actually wore trash cans on their head as they went out and tried drumming up votes. Nothing says vote for me when you're basically Oscar the Grouch of this election. And when a guy's literally trash and he's polling 3% higher than you, maybe he really is the most honest one in this election. I mean, all those years watching Sesame Street, I never thought that Oscar the Grouch would actually win an election. But in England, anything's possible. You know, the land where you got a king or a queen that's not really the president and whatever, it's a little confusing, but they're a lot wealthier than all of us, and I guess that's what matters most. So can elections be rigged? Well, not exactly, but they could definitely be tilted. And trying to rig elections and sway a vote one side or the other, kind of unethically, has been going on since the beginning of time. Now, you would think after hundreds and thousands of years, we may have come up with a better voting system than we basically had in the year 508. But no. Now, some smaller states may have a little more power than the big ones. Kind of like playing football, and where Wyoming gets 5 points every field goal, and California's got to score touchdowns blindfolded. But hey, that's our system in America, right? Pure democracy. I mean, if democracy is one person, one vote, then this is one person, one surprise. Now, I'm not saying elections are rigged or the fix is in by any means. I'm just pointing out things that have happened throughout history and how we're pretty advanced technology wise. And maybe write in ballots might not be the best thing anymore. Maybe we need to come up with a different system that's better than something we've done for thousands of years. So the next time someone says, every single vote counts, say this to them. Unless you live in a non-swing state, then your vote's just a little background noise for CNN. And let me tell you something else when it comes to politics. Propaganda, fake news, and all of that kind of stuff to sway voters one way or another has actually also been going on for thousands of years. This is a tactic that you trace back all the way to ancient Rome and even farther back. So what have we learned here on Funny History today? Voting has been ridiculous basically since day one, and no one's thought up a better way to do it. From Greek cancel cultures to Venetian influencers to America's voting raffle system. America's elections run like raffles. Democracy has always been a group project, basically where half the team didn't read the assignment. So no matter if you're in New Jersey fighting tolls or in a country trying to find floating ballot boxes, remember, democracy is a beautiful mess. And your vote always counts. Well, sometimes. And that's why it can be funny history sometimes. Now, please subscribe, follow, share, like, and drop in the comments your funniest or craziest election stories that you were either part of or remember. Because if we can't laugh at politics, we're just going to end up crying in a voting booth. And thank you again for joining me, Paul Delangelo, with another episode of Funny History.